It is Tuesday, Yud Zayin Tevis Topshin Ayin Tes. We are in Teres Menachem, Sefer HaMamorim, Topshin Yud Gimel, in the Mamar of Shabbos Parshas Shlach, Vayihiyu Bnei Yisroel Bamidbar. We are on page Kuf Pei Aleph, is right, and we are or Kmekein. I think we're up to 2 lines from the bottom. Yeah? Yeah, you're right. The chapter starts up Pizeh, but we are up to 2 lines from the bottom. Ukmekein Gam B'Mechin. Right? So the Rebbe explained the theme of the Maimer is the central theme of the Maimer is serving Hashem in 2 modes. The necessity for serving Hashem not only in a limited mode, but also in an unlimited mode. The Rebbe began by explaining those aspects b'nefesh ha'adam, in man's soul, so to speak, in man, starting from Maisa all the way through Ru'usa de Liba. What are you looking for?
I'm thinking.
And then the Rebbe went on to explain that also in Spheris, in the divine attributes, starting from Malchus, the lowest of the 10, all the way to the Ein Sof Shadifnei Tzimtzum, Hashem's infinite light before the first contraction, these 2 modes. And now the Rebbe in this chapter is explaining how that plays out in actual Avodah, in Avodas Hashem, serving Hashem. So he started with Maisa, action went on to Dibur, Maisa being, he focused on Tzedakah, limited and unlimited. Dibur, he focused on prayer and davening. Machshava, he focused on Torah, study of Torah. Right? Then he went into Ahava V'Yira Tiviyim, natural love and fear of Hashem. And he explained that if it's natural love, or rather the terms that he used, if it's his own love, Litev, it's because he feels that it's good for him. That would be the lower level, or the limited level. Then there's potential for him deciding tomorrow that he's loving something else. It doesn't necessarily have to be in godliness. Whereas when it's Kirvas Adakim Tov, when he recognizes the good, the essential good of godliness, the absolute good of godliness, the objective good of godliness, then there is no room for that love to be vested into any foreign areas, because essential good exists only in godliness. Right? Now the Rebbe is moving on from the emotions to the intellect. 2 lines from the bottom, at the full stop. So too, also in the mind, in the intellect, when a person is contemplating the greatness of Hashem, for example, that even whilst contemplating, what is felt there, also a matter which is beyond rationality. So even though he's using his mind and his seichel, his rationale, to contemplate, for example, the greatness of Hashem, necessarily being that it's man's contemplation, man's intellect, it is what? Limited. So even whilst going through the process of contemplation, the person has the feeling that there's something which is beyond rationality. What would that be in terms of spheres, in terms of levels? Contemplation would be bina, understanding, which is more fleshed out. That which is beyond rationality would be chokhmah, wisdom. Why is that? B'chinas ha-chokhmah. U'mitzad b'chinas ha-chokhmah, top of page Kufei Beis. And insofar as the level of chokhmah is concerned, efshali is yinikah, there cannot be any seepage. Why? Another word for chokhmah is re'iyah, seeing. Connecting to godliness at the level of chokhmah means seeing godliness. Connecting to godliness at the level of bina means understanding godliness. Chokhmah hibchinas re'iyah. Chokhmah is the aspect, is the level of sight, seeing. As it says in Koheles and Ecclesiastes, he says, "V'libi ra harbe chokhmah." My heart saw much wisdom. He says, I've seen everything, I understand everything, etc., etc. and it's all meaningless and so on and so forth, right? But what's the expression he uses? Ra harbe chachma. Note also he uses the word v'libi. But I think libi over here in my heart probably means my soul. Right? So it doesn't mean the emotions, but he's talking about chachma. But what does he use the term? He doesn't say that I understood a lot of wisdom. He says I saw a lot of wisdom. Why? Because chachma and re'iyah are connected. What is the difference between seeing something and understanding something? When you see something, there can be no contradiction. There can be no refutation. When a person sees a fact, you can't refute it. As there's no difference between seeing and hearing or understanding. You can't compare understanding to seeing or listening to seeing. This is a quote from one of the sources, is the Mechilta in Shmos, in the book of Shmos, where Hashem tells Moshe in the run-up to Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, I'm going to speak to you, and you will convey it on to the Bnei Yisroel, to the Jewish people. And then the verse goes on and says, Vayoshav Moshe es divrei ha'omer Hashem. And Moshe comes back and gives the response of the people to Hashem. And it doesn't say what the conversation was. So the Medrash says, when Moshe came and said to the Bnei Yisroel, to the Jewish people, Hashem is going to speak to me and I'll convey onto you what Hashem said. They said, hang on a second. We want to see our king. Why? Because you can't compare someone who hears it from a secondary source than seeing it himself. Similarly, you can't compare understanding something to actually seeing something with physical sight. When he sees the matter or he understands the matter, even when one will comprehend it very well in one's seichel, right? In one's mind, in one's brain. Nonetheless, if there will come about proofs contradicting that which he understood or heard, the matter that he heard or understood will become weakened. And if the proofs refuting that which he understood or saw or heard will be very strong, then that which he heard or understood will be completely refuted. This is not the case when one sees the matter, even in the event that he'll have questions and he'll have contradictions to that which he saw. It's completely unimportant. It doesn't matter at all. And the answer to and on all the questions and refutations that he will be asked, he will answer that he himself saw the phenomena with actual sight. So therefore, with questions, in other words, intellect has no room when it comes to refuting something that one saw. So therefore, this is the case when one sees with actual sight, eyesight. So too, when we talk about seeing, chachma type seeing with the mind's eye, so to speak. As the Gemara says in Talmud, who is the wise one? Chacham. Again, the idea of chacham, the one who sees the future. What does it mean? Sees the future. He sees the consequences of his actions. So the term re'iyah, roya, is used in the context of chachma. What does that mean? The meaning of this saying of the sages is not only that he understands in his mind that which is going to be Mashiach achar kach, which is going to be afterwards, which is going to result from his actions. So not only does he understand what he's doing and the consequences of what that are to follow, but in fact he's roya esanel. He already sees now in his mind's eye the reward of the mitzvah and the loss that one has from an iniquity, from an avera. And therefore, when one operates at the level of re'iyah, when one's connection to godliness is at the level of re'iyah, of sight, therefore there is no possibility for a refutation of that. It comes to doing a mitzvah or refraining from doing an avera, if the connection is at the level of chachma, it can't be refuted. If it's at the level of understanding, then there are things that there's a force that can overcome that understanding. I understand that this is what I should do, or this is what I shouldn't do. But there's something that can overpower that. At the level of Re'iyah or Chochmah, that's not possible. So again, what's the point? That at the level of Moichin, of the intellect, you have the limited aspect, which would be the understanding, the Shmiyah, the Bina, and you have the Re'iyah, the seeing aspect, which would be Chochmah. That would be the unlimited aspect at the level of Moichin. So it's insufficient to have the limited aspect, which would be Bina. You need to have also the unlimited aspect, which is Chachma. This is also the case concerning the Avas Hashem, love of Hashem, known as Ru'usa Deliba, the desire of the heart, meaning the love emanating from the essence of the soul. And if you remember, we had a pretty long shiur, or 2 shiur, on this concept of Ru'usa Deliba, that there is the aspect of Ru'usa Deliba that comes as a result of Gilui. It's the revelation aspect of the soul. But then you have the Ru'usa Deliba as it is at the level of the essence of the soul. So the level of Ru'usa Deliba at the level of the revelation of the soul would be considered the limited aspect at that level. The Ru'usa Deliba emanating from the very essence of the soul, that would be the unlimited aspect at this level. So therefore, also concerning Ru'usa Deliba, she'eina mitzad hagilui, that his Ru'usa Deliba, one's love for Hashem at the level of Ru'usa Deliba, is not as a result of the revelation of the essence of the soul, but rather it results from the very essence of the soul itself. Which means what? It's the cleaving of one essence with the other essence. The cleaving of the essence of the soul with the essence of Hashem. At that level, when the unity is such that it's essence to essence, there is no hold for those that are outside the domain of Kedusha. They can't get into that relationship, so to speak. Because we know that even light pushes away darkness. Light being Gilui, revelation. Here we're talking not at the level of revelation, we're talking at the level of the source of the revelation, the essence. Certainly the luminary himself has the possibility to push away darkness. So the luminary would be Etzem of Hashem, connected to the very Etzem of the soul, and in that context there is no room for a hold from those that are outside of the domain of Kedusha. So this is the Rebbe's explanation in this chapter of the limited and unlimited aspects and modes of serving Hashem at every level, starting all the way from the lowest Maisa, action, going all the way up to the Etzem HaNefesh, to the very essence of the soul, and the desire, the love of Hashem, emanating from the essence of the soul. What does this all have to do with Eitz Hadas and Eitz HaChaim?
This is what you've been waiting.
This is what we've been waiting for.
Yeah, they came because of
this is, I think, the 18th shiur on this Mamar, by the way, if I know correctly. I don't think we're going to finish it. We'll probably finish tomorrow. So we'll have 19 shiurim altogether. I hope. Anyway, so what does it all got to do with Eitz HaChaim and Eitz Hadas? If you remember, the Rebbe began on the Pasuk, Vayihiyu Bnei Yisroel Bamidbar, Vayihiyu Bnei Yisroel, the children of Israel in the desert, and they found a man gathering sticks, B'yom HaShabbos, and the Rebbe brought the 2 interpretations, what this means. The Pirush of the Zohar, right? The Zohar brings 2 interpretations. One interpretation is that which trees was he gathering? The Eitz HaChaim and the Eitz Hadas, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge from the Garden of Eden. Meaning to say, what does it mean he was gathering? He was comparing. Mikoishesh Meloshen Hekesh, comparing the tree of life to the tree of knowledge. To know which one is greater. And the second interpretation is a simple interpretation that he was gathering trees on Shabbos, which you're not allowed to do. So the Rebbe asked, what does it have to do with, was he comparing the tree of knowledge to the tree of life? What is this all about?
And also can't lose its literal meaning, that you shouldn't be able to do it.
Precisely so. The Rebbe will explain that in the next chapter, towards the end. Right? Then the Rebbe asked, and also what's B'yom HaShabbos? It seems to be the emphasis, why was it so terrible, especially if you're talking about comparing the tree of life to the tree of knowledge on Shabbos. What's the emphasis on Shabbos? Right? And then the Rebbe asked the general point.
You should be able to, is that what you're saying? One should be able to, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, if he's comparing the tree of life to the tree of knowledge,
simple understanding of
what does it mean? He was analyzing, he was analyzing the tree of life, tree of knowledge on Shabbos. So terrible about that? Not allowed to. And also the Rebbe said that the whole concept of what's so terrible about the tree of knowledge, if the as the Targum Yonason, I think he brought from the Targum Yonason in Azil, that I'm sorry, Targum Yerushalmi. Targum Yerushalmi says that what was the tree of life, the tree of knowledge? Why was it called the tree of knowledge? It was a tree of knowledge, Toivara. It allowed the person to discern between that which is good and that which is bad. Says the Rebbe, what's so terrible about that? That would be very helpful in a man's service of Hashem. That's what we're trying to accomplish, is to discern between the good and the bad and to focus on the good. So now the Rebbe, based on the whole biur, where he said, to understand this, we have to understand the whole concept of Avodas Hashem, serving Hashem, where there are two modes, the limited and the unlimited. And the Rebbe explained it as it is in man's soul, as it is in the divine attributes above, and as it is in practical Avodas Hashem, serving of Hashem. Now we understand the questions asked in the beginning of the Maimer. Based on all the above, chapter 6 on page Kufay Beis. Based on all the above, we will understand the matter of the sin of the tree of knowledge. For although, as the Rebbe brought earlier from the Targum Yerushalmi, that whoever eats from this tree is able to discern between good and evil, between good and bad. This is a matter which is within the levels of holiness. Why? Because that's what we want in order to serve Hashem. So what was so terrible about that? That's the point. It's limited. It's limited and it's measured. Meaning to say, Hainu, the discernment between the good and the evil is only resulting and in accordance with the measure of the consumption of the fruits. In other words, it will only be based on, and as the Rebbe will soon explain, the deficiency in the tree. Where is the tree limited? Obviously, if it's only Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge, without the tree of life. The tree of life will represent the unlimited aspect. The tree of knowledge represents the limited aspect. Yeah. So if he's eating from the tree of knowledge, then what happens? It's limited in accordance with the power that's vested within that tree, within that fruit. V'suloi, and no more. Weiter geht nicht. He doesn't advance any further. Beyond the power, that the abilities that he gains through eating from the tree of knowledge. And therefore, based on, as the Rebbe explained above, that if we're talking about a limited situation, there's a possibility for undesirable results. Therefore, there's a possibility that what should branch off from this, what should be the result of this? Something negative, something ra, something bad. What is the eitzah? So what is the safeguard? How do we make sure that the tree of the power vested within the tree of knowledge, the ability to discern between good and evil on the limited level, should not evolve into negative areas? As mentioned before, if it's limited, then if it's good or evil, today this is good, tomorrow I come to the conclusion something else is good. So how do I make sure that doesn't happen when I consume from the tree of knowledge? The solution is that the manner of serving Hashem should also be in the mode of the tree of life. That represents the aspect which is beyond limit and beyond measure. If you have the preface, the prerequisite of the tree of life, the unlimited, then you can engage in the limited as well. Right? Because as we know, what was the prohibition? It wasn't that he would be prohibited from eating from the tree of knowledge forever. He had to wait until Shabbos. In other words, what Hashem wanted from him was the order. He couldn't eat from the tree of life, I guess. He couldn't eat from the tree of knowledge until Shabbos. So what did Hashem want? Eat from the tree of life, and then on Shabbos, you can eat from the tree of knowledge. And we'll soon see why Shabbos. Right? But he consumed the tree of knowledge without first consuming the tree of life. So in other words, he engaged in a limited mode of serving Hashem before having the preface and the base and the frame and the foundation of the unlimited aspect. That's where we run into trouble. As indeed was Hashem's desire, that he should first eat from the tree of life, and then he should eat from the tree of knowledge. Why is that? So if the tree of life is so wonderful, so why eat from the tree of knowledge altogether? No. Says the Rebbe, the actual service of Hashem needs to be Avodas HaBerurim. It's to refine. We have to refine the environment and the physical phenomena in which we engage. That's represented in the Eitz Hadas, the good and the evil. Avodas HaBerurim means discerning and separating the good from the evil. So the Avodah serving Hashem at the Eitz Hadas level is the actual Avodah. We need that. However, if we engage only at that level, there could be a seepage to the outside. Therefore, we need the introduction and the foundation of the tree of life, which is beyond limitation. And only after that could there be serving Hashem in the mode of Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge, the limited engagement in Avodas Hashem, in serving Hashem, in order to refine the environment and matter in which we engage.
So the tree, really, talking about the tree of life, Eitz Chaim, is going to help you to discern between Tov and Ra.
The tree of life will ensure that your discernment between good and evil is done in the right context and on the right basis and in the right foundation. Because in simple terms, discernment between good and evil at the Eitz Hadas level means it's reliant on my judgment. So I'm saying in simple terms. So my judgment today, I discerned that this is good and this is evil. Tomorrow I'll discern that this is what I thought yesterday is good is not good. It's like the medical reports you get every so often. Years ago, eggs was very healthy. Then I'm just giving you an example. Then they decided that the yellow part of the egg is too much cholesterol. Then recently they came back with another study that it's not exactly so, right?
Good cholesterol, bad cholesterol.
I'm sorry?
Good cholesterol.
Good cholesterol. Bad. So every jeden Monte Kadonishtik, you come up with a new version. There's no absoluteness. It's dependent on my judgment. The Eitz HaChaim, being that it's upward focused, says, look, there is something which is called absolute. What is that? That which is above. Once we have that foundation, so now I need to do the discernment. I have to engage in the Avodas HaBerurim. I have to do the work. As long as I'm mindful that there's something above me, which is beyond my understanding, beyond my wisdom, then that gives you the safeguard that when I employ my faculties, it'll be employed in the proper way. That's in a nutshell what the Rebbe is trying to say. Now said the Rebbe, in fact, if we look at our Seder Avodah, how we serve Hashem during the day,
The problem with it is that Adam was banished from Gan Eden before he had the opportunity of eating from the tree of life. And therefore we're stuck with the idea that we can never really grab it in order to be able to discern, because that's the real issue.
Well, we
Is it a complaint or not?
No, I'm saying that's the reality, because how do we grab it if we were banned from it?
how do we grab it? By learning Chassidus. When you learn Chassidus, you focus on the unlimited.
It's more difficult work.
Eitz HaChaim, Teres HaNister is called Eitz HaChaim.
Yeah, well,
Timis HaTorah is called the tree of life.
I would imagine by keeping to the 248 positive commandments and abstaining from the 365, that enables you to do it.
That's doing it already.
Yeah, but before, to discern.
Yeah, I'm saying with
You've
the
got-
idea of intellect and all those ideas, I don't know how one would do it. Hashem never gave us the chance.
Of course, that's what I'm telling you.
All right.
Why? You
That's
said
what
like
Chassidus is about. No, that's what Chassidus is about.
Exactly. Divrei Elokim Chaim.
All right.
Ukmeikin is Seder Avodah. Harris, I think we need a good verbringen.
Always,
Huh?
what do you mean you think only now?
Ukmeikin, who say that of it's.
Why do we need one? Because we didn't have the Eitz HaChaim.
There you go. So we you're right. It's always necessary, but sometimes it's highlighted more than usual.
They're not so easy to find these days. Good for drink.
Well, if we look hard enough,
You have to make them.
Okay.
if you look to find, then you
have to
find.
stay and go to-
So now these two modes and the order in which they should be performed, we find in our service of Hashem every day. How do we start? We wake up in the morning. What do we do? The first thing we do is say Maidani. What does it mean? I submit. Bittul. In other words, it's not understanding. It's not about me. It's about accepting that Hashem exists. Then hoidu la'avaya. Again, the idea I submit, right, to Hashem. Bittul. That's the first step. Nullification. We start with submission. We start with nullification, which is beyond rationality, beyond limit and measure and limit. So that's the Eitz HaChaim. That's the aspect. That's the unlimited aspect. The Rak La'achrize, and only after that, boys, bonus Shabbat comes along the contemplation of in davening. That's already the intellectual part, the rational part, where we rationally his bonus, the contemplation part. Particularly in the verses of song and in the blessings of Shema. So that is already focused on fleshing it all out in rationally, emotionally, and so on and so forth. But that's la'achri akdamas habitl dafke. It comes specifically after the prerequisite, after the introduction of bittul, of nullification to Hashem. As mentioned, we start with Moida Ani and we start with Hoidu, which is the idea of submission and bittul. In fact, just as an aside, the Rebbe spoke once on Sicha, I think it was a Shkedesh Kislev, Nun Aleph, and Beis. The Rebbe spoke about there is the level of Moida Ani, which, as the Rebbe explains at length in Yonah Shulteris Achsidus, it's from the essence of the soul, which is what we're talking about over here. Then the Rebbe says there's even a higher level. The Alter Rebbe writes in Siddur, Miyad Sheneir Mishnasei, as soon as the person wakes up, he should say Moida Ani. So Moida Ani is already the second step. There's the way you wake up. Miyad Sheneir Mishnasei. How the person wakes up. That's even beyond the level of Moida Ani. But basically, the bottom line is the idea is that Moida Ani, Hoidu, is the foundation, is the beginning, is the context. It frames our Avodas Hashem, which is the idea of bittul, submission to Hashem, l'mayla memdidav agbola, beyond our own limitations. And only that do we follow, only after that do we follow, after Hoidu, we follow with Sukkot Zimra, B'chas Krishma, where we contemplate Hashem's greatness, Hashem's kindness, Hashem's greatness. But it's only after following the prerequisite, the introduction, the foundation of bittul, of nullification to Hashem. So first, the l'mayla medida, first the beyond measure and limit, and then comes the medida v'agbola successfully. Serving Hashem at the level of medida v'agbola in a successful way. Please God, tomorrow, we'll carry on tomorrow, and hopefully we finish the Maimer tomorrow.
We haven't really